Hello everyone and welcome to this video on modelling components in Fusion 360. In this video we're going to be modelling the component that you can see on screen now. If you'd like to follow along with this exercise you can find an engineering drawing for this component in the video description below. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to create a new component, and we can do that by clicking the New Design tab at the top of the Fusion 360 window. Now the first thing that I want to do for this particular component is I want to create an extrude feature, which is the main body of the component. To do that, I'm going to go to create sketch, and I'm going to select a sketch plane. In this case, I'm going to select the XY plane. To create the main cube of material, I need to sketch a rectangle or a square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the 2-point rectangle tool from my create toolbar. I'm going to align the rectangle at the top left corner of the rectangle with the origin of my component, and I'm going to place the rectangle like so. I'm then going to dimension the rectangle as per my engineering drawing, and for this particular component I require a 25 by 25 rectangle. I'm happy with that sketch, so I can click Finish Sketch. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create an extrude feature to create my main cube of material. I do this by going to the Create menu and picking the Extrude command. It's automatically selected the profile that I've just sketched, so all I need to set is the height of my extrude feature, and in this case that is going to be 25 millimeters. I'm happy with that feature, so I can press OK. The next feature that I'm going to create is the pocket feature in the top of the component. In order to do this, I'm going to go to the Create Sketch button, and I'm going to place a sketch on the top face of my cube. What I need to do next is I need to pick the 2-point rectangle command, and again I'm going to sketch a square approximately the right shape and size, and then I'm going to dimension this square appropriately. So in this case there is a 3mm border all the way around the edge of that particular square. So I'm just going to dimension between my rectangle and the edge of my existing geometry. I'm happy with that sketch, so I can click Finish Sketch. And again, I'm going to create an extrude command, so I'm going to go to Extrude, and this time Fusion has not picked the profile automatically, so I just need to pick the profile that I've just sketched. Now I could use this feature to add additional material by dragging the blue arrow upwards, and this would add more material onto my model, but this time I'm going to use the extrude command in order to cut away and remove material and create that pocket. So I'm going to move the arrow downwards, and as soon as I do that, you'll see how Fusion defaults to changing the operation to a cut operation. Now sometimes it may not do this, so if you do want to cut material away, you might need to manually select the operation and change that to cut. The depth of the pocket is 3mm, so I'm happy with this feature and I can press OK. Now on the component that I'm modelling, I have exactly the same feature on the other side of the component. So what I could do is I could repeat all of the actions that I've just done, and I could create an identical pocket on the bottom face of the component. Because these pockets are identical and they are centered about or they are on each of the top and bottom faces of my component, it would make more sense to add these as a mirror command. So I'm going to mirror this feature from the top face of my component to the bottom face of my component. In order to create a mirror feature, I need to tell the software which features I want to mirror, or which geometry I want to mirror, and where I want to mirror that geometry about. So if I want to mirror this feature, this pocket feature on the top of my component, I would need a plane which runs through the center of my component, and that's not something that I've currently got. So before I create my mirror feature, I need to create a mid-plane. I do this by going to Construct and going to Mid-Plane, and then I need to select two planes. So I'm going to select the top face of my component and the bottom face of my component, and this will put a mid-plane equidistant between those two faces. I'm happy with that mid-plane, so I can press OK, and now I've got everything I need to create a mirror command. So I go to Create and Mirror. My pattern type will be set to features. If this isn't done automatically, then pick features, and then I can pick the features that I wish to mirror. I can either do this by selecting them on the model itself, or by going down to the feature tree and selecting them there. So I'm going to pick this Extrude 2 feature to mirror, and then I need to tell the command a mirror plane i.e. where to mirror that feature about. So I'm going to go to select and pick that mirror plane that I've just created. This instantly gives me a preview of what the command is going to do, and I can see how another pocket will be created on the bottom of my component. I'm happy with this, so I can press OK. So I now have pockets on the top and bottom of my component. I no longer need this midplane, so in order to keep my workspace nice and tidy, I'm going to go to construction arrow, drop down, and I'm going to press the eye icon next to plane 1, and this just turns the visibility of this particular feature off. If I do need to use it again, I can just use the eye icon to turn that on and off. Next, I'm going to create the pockets on the left hand and the right hand side of my component. So again, I'm going to go to create sketch, and I'm going to create a sketch on the left hand side of my component. Again, I'm going to select a rectangle, and I'm going to sketch something which is approximately correct. And again, I'm going to dimension between the edge of my rectangle and the edge of my existing geometry as per the engineering drawing. I'm happy with my sketch, so I can press finish sketch, and again I can extrude this sketch in order to remove material, and again the sketch or the pocket depth is 3 millimeters. On this particular pocket, however, rather than having square corners, we have rounded corners. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a fillet feature to each of the edges of this pocket. Now I could have accomplished this by sketching these rounded corners in when I created the sketch, but an easier way is to actually use the fillet feature once I've created the pocket. So I'm going to pick each of these corners. If I need to pick multiple corners, then I simply hold down the control key and select as many corners or edges as I need. In this particular case, that fillet is 2 millimeters. I'm now going to repeat the actions that I did for the top and bottom pocket, so I'm going to mirror this feature across to the other side of my component. So I'm going to create a midplane between the left hand face and the right hand face of my component, and then I'm going to create a mirror feature. I'm going to make sure that I'm mirroring features, but this time rather than just mirroring the extrude feature, I also want to mirror the fillet feature. So I'm going to pick both the extrude and the fillet feature in my model timeline. And again, I'm going to give it the midplane that I've just created. I'm happy with the preview that it's showing me, so I can press OK. I now have the pockets on the top and the bottom of my component, and the left and the right of my component. So the features that I need to have yet to create are the rounds on the corner of my component and the slots running through the front of my component. Now, normally you would create fillet features, or you would tend to create fillet features last, but if I was to create the slots first and then create the fillet features, in order to create the fillet features on this edge, I would need to select 3 individual edges rather than just selecting one edge. So to make this a little bit easier for myself, I'm going to create the fillet features first, then I'm going to create the slot. To create the fillet feature, I go to modify and fillet, and I'm going to pick each of the corners of my component, holding down the control key to select multiple edges. Those particular features are 3 millimeters. Once I'm happy with that feature, I can press OK. And actually, I no longer need this midplane that I created, so I'm going to turn that off as well. So then the final feature is the slots through the front of my component. So in order to do this, I'm going to create a sketch. So I'm going to go to the Create Sketch button, and I'm going to sketch on the right hand side of my component. I'm going to get a rectangle tool, and I'm going to put 2 rectangles in approximately the correct place. I think the first thing that I'm going to do is dimension the width of my slots as per the engineering drawing, so I can dimension between the bottom of the component and my sketch geometry in order to be able to do this. Next, I'm going to dimension the depth of my slot, so I'm going to dimension from here to the back face of the component and set that to 20 millimeters as per the engineering drawing. Now the last part of the sketch that I need to resolve is the front faces of these two rectangle features. So at the minute these are not constrained, these can move, and I need to set either a dimension or a constraint from these. Ideally I would have these aligned with the front face of my component. So in order to do this, what I'm going to do is use the project include command. So I go to create, project / include, and project. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to pick existing geometry and project the edges of that geometry as sketch lines onto my current sketch. So I'm going to pick this face here. That's the only face that I need to pick, so I can press OK, and you can see how it's dropped these purple lines into my sketch. That now makes it a lot easier for me to snap my existing sketch lines to these newly projected sketch lines. So I can go to coincident under my constraints. In my constraints area, I can pick the line that I wish to constrain, and I can make that coincident with, let's say, this top corner of my component, and I can do the same for the bottom slot as well. And as soon as I do that, I can see how the front edge of my rectangle snaps to the front edge or the front face of my component, and that all the lines in my sketch turn black, indicating that my sketch is fully constrained. I'm happy with that sketch now, so I can press finish sketch. And then finally I just need to create an extrude command to remove the material for those two slots at the front of the component. So I go to extrude, and I need to pick the profiles that I wish to extrude. Now because I've projected these purple lines, you can see how that's divided my my sketched rectangle into two areas. This just means that I need to pick both of these areas when I create my extrude feature. And then I'm just going to grab the blue arrow and move that backwards through the component to create a cut. Again, I might need to manually set the operation to cut, and I'm going to move that all the way through the component. Now one option I do have when I'm cutting material away from an existing body is to change the distance or distance option under extent to all. What this means is that that cut will go on forever, it will go on through all of the material, and it means that no matter how I change the size of my component, these cuts or these slots will always go all the way through the component and won't stop short. I'm happy with that feature, so I can press OK. And now I've finished all of the geometry that I require to make for this particular example component. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.